Welcome back to Son of a Glitch, and here we are playing the Legend of Zelda Minish Cap, and we're hoping we don't break it in the first 5 minutes of the game. Well, there goes that hope and dream, I guess, and a lot earlier than I expected. So it turns out if you roll frame perfectly on this exact spot before talking to this dude, he loses the gift of speech, and Link is both too kind and too mute to intervene. And with no other choice, this Softlock will have you reaching for that reset button fairly quickly. Okay, off to a great start. We're headed to Deepwood Shrine now, and I wonder if there's a way to break the game here. The answer being, of course, yes. In this dungeon, you'll encounter these large lily pads which carry Link around the flooded parts of Deepwood Shrine. Standing on one of the lily pads in this room, use the gush jar, maneuver the lily pad roughly into this corner, and with Link facing upwards, use the gush jar and walk off the lily pad. This just stops Link moving on to the next screen, and the lily pad should come to a rest against the bottom edge. Get back on the lily pad and then push it to the left with the gush jar, and then charge it up whilst moving Link to the very corner of this wall. If positioned correctly, releasing the gush jar should now force Link onto a higher ledge, allowing us to navigate out of bounds. Moving left until the screen stops, perform 2 full rolls upwards, and then moving left once again should land Link here, and enable us to enter the adjacent room while still being on the higher layer. You see, the game is divided into 2 graphical layers, one placed above the other, which is why Link is currently walking on water. Objects are still interactive, but until Link physically jumps down from the upper layer, things won't return to normal. Luckily, in this instance, there's a door which acts as a ledge that Link can jump down from, and things can progress as intended. Well, for now anyway. This particular way of breaking Deepwood Shrine isn't exactly beneficial in any way, but it looks very cool. However, this ability to clip out of bounds and reach layers in unintended ways will come up again as we go forward, so keep it fresh in your mind. In Royal Valley reside these genie who try to grab Link and lick him to death. Yummy. You can use the gush jar to suck them up, however something strange happens if you try to suck them up and come into contact with them during their damage frames. Instead of sucking them up, they'll actually move through Link and seemingly steal his body. Obviously, this is not intended, and you're now unable to control Link, essentially resulting in a softlock, which makes this seemingly easy glitch to do accidentally pretty game-breaking. In Hyrule Town, you'll find this guard to the west who blocks your path until you show him that you've learned the spin attack. However, you can abuse the respawning mechanic in the game and skip the interaction with this guard altogether by first standing in front of this sign and then walking along these tiles exactly like this. Make your way to the small bridge and then walk into the stream where Link will begin to flail in the water. As the camera begins to transition, press start to enter the item menu, then exit the menu whilst holding left on the D-pad, and Link should casually walk off the screen before the guard can even react, and you'll enter the Trilby Highlands without ever having to talk to the guard. Now this works because standing at the sign sets your respawn point and then avoiding certain other tiles which would override that point. This means when you go into the stream, Link will warp to the respawn point we just set, and pausing to the item menu immediately makes the camera catch up to Link, allowing you to move left and slip past the guard. Yeah, that'll teach you to be socially adept. In the Trilby Highlands, you'll find a cave accessible with the mole mitts which can also be excavated to explore inside. Dig around and then leave the cave, heading for the cave in Eastern Hills, making sure to never exit Hyrule Field and see a white screen fade. Now enter the Eastern Hills cave, and immediately you'll notice that things aren't quite as you'd expect, with certain tiles being placed incorrectly. Retrace your steps back to the Trilby Highlands cave, and inside you'll see the problem has escalated somewhat, with even more incomprehensible tile placement. Once again, go back to the Eastern Highlands cave and witness what can only be described as complete nonsense. Essentially, the tiles have become corrupted due to being overwritten in memory, creating this weird graphical glitch. You're also able to exit the left side of the cave due to the collision being absent, so you can explore in the dark a little. You can also perform this glitch in Lake Hylia by going back and forth between the caves to the north and the middle of the lake. Now, there's no real application to this glitch, but it's just another side of how broken this game can be. If you've ever talked to this guy Eenie, you'll know that you can fuse kinstones with him to progress the Goron quest, in which you help 6 Goron break down a wall to eventually receive a bottle. Wow, what a prize. Don't they have online shopping in Hyrule? It could have saved a whole lot of effort. Anyway, when first talking to Eenie and trying to fuse kinstones, if you change your mind and leave the area, in the PAL version of the game, you can never fuse kinstones with him ever again. Meaning, you'll never have enough Gorons to break that wall and get that oh so coveted prize. This also means you won't be able to fuse kinstones with the 6th Goron in order to wake the big Goron and receive the mirror shield, so that's off the table too. Luckily, this was fixed in the US and Japanese versions of the game, but it's very easy to have this happen in the PAL version, so be very careful. The observant among you will have noticed that Link holds his sword in his left hand. But something weird happens if you fall into a hole and holding down left, jump out, then immediately begin charging a spin attack. Suddenly, Link will now be holding his sword in his right hand instead. For some reason, jumping out of a hole like this flips Link's sprite entirely, and now even the sparkles of the sword charging are in the wrong spot. This can easily be fixed by just having Link face another direction, but very strange indeed. The boomerang is one of the more useful tools at Link's disposal, but not everything about it works the way it's intended. If you use the flame lantern then immediately use the boomerang, you'll see Link acts as if he throws out the boomerang, however seemingly nothing is thrown out. But if you now try to throw out the boomerang, nothing happens at all. Link did actually throw the boomerang, but it didn't go where it's expected to go. If you wait for a short period of time, you'll see it instead went flying to the top left of the map, which is why it takes so long for it to return to Link. To say this is some odd behavior would be an understatement. In Hyrule, you're never far away from some grass or a bush you can pick out of the ground. You'll also know that you can use the flame lantern to set grass on fire, which should keep any pyromaniac entertained. However, if you set grass on fire, then frame perfectly lift it out of the ground as it's fully ablaze, Link will now be holding a regular piece of grass that's no longer on fire. The sprite of the grass exists, but doesn't have any actual properties anymore, which means when you throw it, the sprite turns invisible as the game already considers it technically destroyed. This glitch can be performed with any grass or bush as long as you have the time to light the patch and then grab one further along the chain. One of the quirkiest glitches in Minish Cap is called diagonal angle retention, as you'll soon see why. Jumping out of a hole holding the direction Link is facing along with the diagonal direction, for example down left, Link's sprite will appear to be flipped, which we saw in the glitch where Link becomes right-handed. In the game data, the value that holds Link's facing direction is changed to a value not normally seen in normal play and one directly tied to a diagonal input. This value can be retained when moving in different directions by either rolling, charging a spin attack, holding shield, or many other actions Link can perform which involve using the myriad of items in the game. It's this changed value that allows us to perform unintended interactions with objects, particularly those that can be pushed or pulled. In the Cave of Flames, this angle retention allows us to perform what's known as the minecart skip. You'll reach this room filled with lava that you need to glide across, and after pressing the button in the corner of the room, move this pillar with a chest on top to this position and then go into the hole. Press down right to have Link jump out of the hole, and when he lands on the ground, this new diagonal angle is set, but in order to keep it, we need to perform another action, such as a roll or charging the spin attack. Once charged, you'll be able to move while retaining the weird angle, meaning you can now move to where the pillar with the chest on it is. Now you're next to it, you can grab it and then begin pulling it to the left, and immediately you'll notice that something is a little off here, as the pillar is now going through the wall and beyond the doorway. When Link reaches this tile, stop pulling and the pillar will now be sat on the loading transition between this room and the one north of here. And essentially, that has taken it out of action, allowing us to stand on it without taking Link anywhere. Although we're unable to see the pillar, what we now want to do is go through the door heading directly up and push the pillar upwards just once, listening out for the sound of it being pushed. You'll see that we can grab it and now drag it down by holding R the entire time until it's squarely back in the room. Now push it into the hole that we used to get the angle retention in the first place so we can grab the key that's inside. Okay, so all that's left to do is go through the doorway, but you'll quickly realize that the camera stays firmly in this room, meaning we'll have to navigate out of bounds blind. That's not a problem though, as going through the door and holding up and right on the D-pad will take you to a room where you would arrive after all the minecarts. And from here you can go through each room to reach this area and progress through the dungeon as normal. But we're not done with angle retention just yet in the Cave of Flames, oh no. It can also be used in this particular room, twice in fact, for a boss key skip which requires a tiny bit of setup first. Using the Gust Jar, pick up one of the many roller bites in the room and then get as close as you can to the wall like this and then fire it into the wall, where it will now be stuck. Grab another one and throw it into the furthest hole next to the switch that we're able to pull and now jump into the third hole along. Jump out of the hole using down right on the D-pad, then immediately grab the switch which will alter Link's position, and now we just drag the switch up to just below where the roller bite was forced into the wall. Perform angle retention again by jumping out of this hole, storing the angle with a roll and spin attack, then position Link next to the switch, grab it and pull left so the switch is in the wall, and the roller bite now has a friend. Finally, jump in the hole again and now hold up right on the D-pad until you're able to grab the switch. And upon doing so, Link's position will change to go through a screen transition and into the room to the north of us. Okay, so the roller bite in the wall helped push us through the wall and onto layer 2 of the next room, enabling us to make our way directly to the boss room with very little effort. Except for when you reach this part, you'll hit a solid wall, and from here go directly right so that you don't end up soft-locking yourself, and when you reach the door, move up and you'll land in the room to drop down to the boss, which all in all skips getting the Cave of Flames boss key. We're still not done, as there's also a use for the angle retention glitch in the Palace of Winds when you reach this room with the spiked roller, which allows you to keep a small key to use later on the boss key chest instead of this door to the left. Jump in this hole and equip the cane and Link's shield, then jump out holding down right on the D-pad, and then use Link's shield to retain the glitched angle. Use the cane and then go quickly back into the hole, still holding down right, giving Link a diagonal spring upwards, which is called a Wurble Hop. This places Link on layer 2, allowing you to easily bypass this small key door and simply jump up to the next floor. All in all, angle retention has to be one of the more interesting ways to break Minish Cap, and we like that here. In the southwest of Hyrule Town, you'll find Karlov, who trades mysterious shells for collectible figurines of various characters in the game. One particular figurine stands out in this collection, the Ice Wizrobe, as in its bio it mentions the Fire Rod, an item typical to many Zelda games but remains unused in Minish Cap. It's suggested the Fire Rod was an item that was removed from the game late in development, possibly obtained instead of or as an upgrade to the Flame Lantern. This reference to the Fire Rod was mistakenly left in the PAL version of the game, and several other lines of text talking about the Fire Rod also exist in the game's data. So while not necessarily a glitch, it was definitely not intended. One of the most annoying enemies in the game, Peahats, usually seen hovering around and getting in your way, can actually be useful in one of the more significant skips in the game, avoiding the vast majority of Castor Wilds and the Wind Ruins. Heading to Castor Wilds, we need to make our way to this upper ledge area where you'll find a Peahat just off to the right, the perfect position for you to use the Gust Jar to pull it up onto the ledge from below. We have to be careful though, because if the Peahat gets sucked into the Gust Jar, it's bye-bye Peahat. Fortunately, we can pause buffer by waiting until you see the Peahat start to move toward the Gust Jar, reach this part of the ledge, and then press start to enter the items menu. This cancels out the Gust Jar, leaving the Peahat on the edge of this cliff and on the same layer as Link. We need to repeat the same steps to pull the Peahat onto the ledge proper, as it's currently on the other side of an invisible wall. Once it's completely on the ledge, you'll actually be able to push it around in its stunned state using Link's shield, and if the Peahat begins to move around, you can use the Gust Jar to stun it once again. In fact, the Gust Jar is actually a better way to manipulate the Peahat and move it to where you need it. We now want to push it to a very specific area, and thankfully, due to the pixels, this is very easy to tell if it's in the right place. You need the Peahat to look exactly like this using certain pixel landmarks to quickly see if it's correct. If so, you'll need to roll towards the bridge, then nudge the Peahat upwards twice with the shield, hopefully moving it into its final position. You can then either roll upwards or charge the Pegasus boots to clip through the gap between the wooden post and the Peahat. If the clip has worked, you'll notice that the usual collision doesn't apply and these vines won't hurt you, and you're able to simply make your way to this area of Castor Wilds. Continuing down, the screen will transition and you will now enter the Wind Ruins area incorrectly and off screen. Here we need to simply keep heading to the right using the Pegasus boots to move faster, and eventually you'll reach the Fortress of Wind's load zone. Now this is a very loose explanation of a complex skip, but essentially this all works because of the way the layers in this area are placed. By avoiding certain tiles which would place Link on the correct layer, we can place him on the wrong layer and bypass the surrounding collision and simply walk across the map. Again, I'm paraphrasing, and to truly understand this skip, I'd recommend this tutorial from Myth197, which goes into vastly more detail. But what an absolutely nuts skip this is, truly breaking the game. In this building in Hyrule Town, you'll find Din, Nehru, and Faeror, and fusing kinstones with any one of them will start a side quest to rent a house from Gorman. Once you've completed this side quest, you're given a charm from whoever moved into Gorman's house. With this charm in a bottle, head to Mama's Cafe and inside drink the charm, and you'll notice immediately that Link is now orange. This is only temporary, however, as you can simply wait for Link to return to normal or leave Mama's Cafe to see Link sport a new color tunic from the charm. Here's a peculiar glitch involving the bottle item in the game. With a bottle on the B button, if you stand in front of a sign, pour out the bottle by pressing B, and then read the sign with the A or R button in quick succession, this will cancel out the bottle animation with a text box, which we can then close to put Link in a state where he's now unable to take damage. Rolling, picking anything up, or climbing a ladder will return Link's state to normal, but you can very easily reactivate the glitch because the bottle will still have whatever was in there when you activated bottle glitch. This glitch is used for a very complicated speedrun trick called the Gyorg Clip, which involves altering Link's push value to get knocked out of bounds by a Tektite and eventually end up in Trilby Highlands to skip getting the red sword and avoiding a cutscene to save time. This glitch also carries on the time-honored tradition of having signs and bottles break Zelda games in ways that were certainly never intended. Another way of skipping certain parts of the game which you wouldn't expect is a technique called boss door clipping, a glitch which allows Link to bypass loading zone triggers and freely walk around beyond the door. This glitch needs either the boomerang or the lantern, with each one having a slightly different knack to it. The boomerang version used in the Temple of Droplets boss door clip requires you throw the boomerang away from the door, open the door, and then immediately start holding the button with the boomerang on, and then walk into the door. Feel like I'm saying door too much. With Link now on the other side of this transition, it's possible to get to a room much later in the dungeon through a series of precise steps which I won't go over here for the sake of time, but as you can see, this completely destroys reality and, as a bonus, skips ever needing the flippers from this dungeon, which obviously is very useful during a speedrun. The lantern version of this glitch is used to skip the second half of the Palace of Winds. With the lantern on the B button, standing in front of the boss door, use the lantern and then press A or R immediately to open the door. If performed correctly, Link will simply slide through the door, and now you'll be out of bounds, allowing you to follow a slightly convoluted path directly to the boss of the dungeon. Now, even though there are only these two use cases for boss door clipping, it's incredibly useful for getting to places quicker than intended. While we're here fighting the Gyorgs, there's a couple of weird smaller glitches you can try out. You can learn a sword move that you'd usually get once you've obtained Rock's Cape from the Palace of Winds called the Down Thrust. And once you've learned this move, go back to the palace and enter the fight with Gyorg. During the section where you stand on the small blue Gyorg and try to attack its eyes, perform the down thrust and immediately begin mashing the attack button, and hopefully you should get this state where Link is placed slightly higher than the Gyorg, seemingly hovering off the ground. The blue Gyorg will fly out of the frame, leaving Link to fly forward for as long as you can continue hitting the attack button. When you eventually tire, Link will fall and the background will continue scrolling, but you're once again soft-locked. Seems to be a running theme in this episode. The other glitch you can perform during this boss also needs Rock's Cape once again. Enter the map screen, then exit back into the game, and now we want to jump as far north as possible, where you'll discover these oddly glitched out 8x8 tiles that for some reason Link is able to stand on, if you're able to stick the landing, that is. They're so small it's very easy to fall off and be placed back on the big Gyorg, but you can simply try again. Switching between the levels on the map changes the configuration of the tiles, but not to any great length. It's incredibly strange how this glitch is A, even a thing, or B, anybody thought to jump all the way over here to discover it. There's a Minish-sized cave at the north end of Lake Hylia with collapsing floor tiles inside it. Break this one in particular and then approach it from the south side, and Link will fall into it and be placed on the ground, but in his swimming state. This now means you're unable to move from that spot and are essentially soft-locked until you save quit and reload the file. This kind of softlock can also be performed in the Palace of Winds right at the beginning of the dungeon. Stand at the top of this screen, move right and then use Rock's Cape. Hold up on the D-pad and press sword to perform the down thrust technique mentioned earlier in the episode. If you perform this correctly, Link will once again get stuck, this time falling to his doom. Link will lose all his health but never actually die, and this time you won't be able to save and quit out. You know, I don't think anybody expected Eternal Life to look like this. I kind of feel like that Peahat is mocking me. Within the Fortress of Winds, you'll find these Armos enemies that can easily be manipulated by moving in certain ways, and we're gonna use that to our advantage. Firstly, there's an unactivated Armos in front of a switch that we kinda need to pull, but it requires us to be Minish-sized, or at least it did. Enter the room, activate these two skulls which should aggro the rightmost Armos, and then walk under the one blocking the switch. Charge a spin attack and then back into this Armos, then release, and when the moving Armos reaches this point, charge the Pegasus boots and hold down left until you bonk the wall. Hold right whilst Link is in the air and then release it once he lands, and this should put him inside the powered down Armos. Now quickly do a sword slash, and during this press up and then sword slash again, releasing up to make Link face the switch. Don't hold up as Link will be pushed out of the Armos. And with Link facing the switch, hold R and pull the switch down to get the key. Oh, wasn't all that just so simple? The second Armos clip is thankfully a lot easier than what we just went through, and all it requires is manipulating the Armos to basically charge this grey block, and then you time a roll into the path of it, and if you do this correctly, the Armos should push Link through this tiny gap at the corner of these two blocks. These are two pretty important clips that help speedrunners get through the Fortress of Winds quickly, but we're not done breaking this dungeon yet. This next glitch is only possible on the Japanese and PAL versions of the game, and is a glitch known as portal items. It turns out it's possible to use items on Minish portals, and in this one use case, we're going to use the molmets on this portal in the Fortress of Winds to skip getting the boss key of this dungeon and go directly to the fight with Mazal. First, place a bomb above the portal, then position Link next to it, either side, and hold up left or up right depending on which side you're on. Now, use the molmets when Link touches the upper half of the portal, and if you've timed it correctly, you should hear this sound, and once you do, let go of all directions. This knocks Link off the portal, and now he should be hovering next to it. Now we need to wait for the third bomb flash. This next step you can wing it, but I'd recommend pause buffering until you see one of these good frames of the big blue bomb and then hold up. If you've done all this correctly, the bomb blast should be enough to damage boost Link over the layer 1 wall up to layer 2. This means you're able to simply walk northwest to the Mazal fight, however, there are some measures you should take beforehand, as it's possible to softlock the game by going straight to the boss. Some examples being Mazal won't have the correct hands, and the fight doesn't start properly, or it will start, but because you're on the wrong layer, you won't be able to damage Mazal, or bonus third option, Mazal will just explode out of fear, I guess, upon seeing Link, trapping us in this room forever. Yeah, just great. To fix this, before going into the room, use the doorway to jump down and correct Link's position, and head into the Mazal fight, safe in the knowledge that you've skipped a significant amount of this dungeon. Maybe that's why Mazal exploded. Anger that you cheated. You'll have noticed the many staircases through Link's adventure which act as a way of going from the low layer to the high layer and vice versa. I mean, of course, that's exactly what stairs are meant to do. They typically have collision around the top of the staircase to stop the player from simply walking beyond the high layer's boundary. However, there exist two staircases that don't have this collision in place, one in the Palace of Winds and the other in Dark Hyrule Castle. So by lining Link up in a specific way, you're actually able to charge up the Pegasus boots, hold right on the D-pad before Link begins moving, and you should drift to the right and clip through a sub-pixel gap in the wall's collision. If you bump the wall like this, your sub-pixel lineup wasn't quite correct, so you'll have to position Link to try again. This is yet another method for being able to keep Link on the upper layer and allowing us to walk across rooms in unrestricted ways and notably skip the intended path. In the Palace of Winds, Stair Clip creates a huge shortcut by instead taking us through these three rooms, a short detour outside where we really need to watch our step, and then a left screen transition to enter the overall destination. Dark Hyrule Castle Stair Clip is the same same setup as Palace of Winds, but obviously the route once you successfully achieve it is different. Namely, once you clip out, you'll reach this part where you want to transition the screen up, but this will actually get Link stuck in the wall. But luckily, we can use Rock's Cape to jump and land on the other side of the collision, which actually allows us to progress through the castle backwards to the point where we exit some stairs through a locked door, which looks completely normal. So I think we can all agree that Stair Clip is very broken, but also very useful. One of the more famous glitches in Minish Cap involves the Ocarina of Wind. By standing in front of a doorway or a staircase, pressing up on the D-pad, and then one frame after pressing the button the ocarina is on, you'll notice that Link doesn't actually play the ocarina or enter the door or use a staircase. Now, it almost feels like you're pressing up and the ocarina at the same time, but it's ever so slightly one before the other, making sure not to hold up for too long as Link will use the staircase or enter the door. As you can see, everything currently on screen is frozen, and this is stage 1 of the glitch, and there are a few things you cannot or must not do. You won't be able to pause in this state, and rolling will softlock the game, as will running into a wall with Pegasus boots, jumping off a ledge, and talking to NPCs. If you go to another area by scrolling the map and not entering a white transition which loads a new part of the map, you'll basically fix all the softlocking issues mentioned before, and this will allow you some freedom with the Ocarina Glitch. So now we know all the rules, how exactly can we use Ocarina Glitch? Well, there are many sequence breaks in the Temple of Droplets that rely on the use of Ocarina Glitch to get and keep Link out of bounds, such as this path to get to the boss key without using a small key obtained beforehand, which is saved for the mini-boss instead. You'll see that using the stairs can actually change the layer Link is on, which is the reason we're able to get to the boss key in this instance, and if we want to go to a lower layer again, remember you can always jump down from above doorways. And from here we can simply roll into the pit where the boss key is. Another very out of bounds sequence break in Temple of Droplets takes Link from the blue warp room all the way to a point much later in the dungeon, and in doing this you can see some pretty trippy stuff, like these tiles that exist in a realm beyond the screen. All in all, this skips the second half of the dungeon, which needless to say is pretty great if you're in a hurry. In a speedrun, Ocarina Glitch is also used to reach Palace of Winds early, as the stairs up to the entrance is blocked by NPCs who won't let you access it until you complete a certain side quest. Luckily, Ocarina Glitch makes it possible to walk through them and all the way to the top to reach the dungeon. There is a downside to this, however, as if you need to get back down the stairs for whatever reason, you'll be blocked by these NPCs and stuck in place, soft-locked, which is a cautionary tale, that's for sure. So, to answer the big question of how broken is The Legend of Zelda Minish Cap, it is incredibly broken. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next episode.